What is going on, folks? Welcome back to the channel once again. This is going to be an attempt to redial in one of my favorite tones from Pink Floyd, Shine On You Crazy Diamond. This is the live edition from Pulse. I believe this was my first preset that I ever dialed in. I was a complete noob at that time with the XFX and with the camera. You can go and check out the video in the channel and you'll know what I'm talking about. Hopefully this is a better improvement. I've learned so much since the time. I'm still a newbie though, and I hope this is going to be a better attempt at the preset. The original preset is there on the Exchange. You can try it out anytime. It's there for Aries 1.03. Now I thought instead of upgrading it to Aries 2, I might as well give it another try and try it on Aries 2 as a fresh attempt, and hopefully this time we're gonna sound something better. So without further ado, let's dive right into Axe Edit and let's dial it in. Cheers. Alright, so what I've got in front of me is the Axe Edit, and as always I've got a clean DI signal of the guitar going through. I'm playing a Fender Stratocaster. This is an American Deluxe. It has the standard N3 noiseless pickups, which I'm not a huge fan of, but they sound alright. But we'll work with what we've got. This is a pretty common setup with, I think, most of you guys. So let's dive in and dial in the basic stuff. Obviously we're going to have an amp and a cab. Without that, no preset would be complete. Now for this one, I usually do a lot of research. For this one, I am going with a bit of research and a bit of my ear. What we're going to choose here as an amp is a Deluxe Tweed, which is the implementation of the Fender Tweed Deluxe amp in the XFX2. What we're going to do is also add a cab, which is going to be a 4x12 cab, of course, and this is going to be one of the cabs of the basket weave version. You can choose pretty much any of these cabs from here, or even choose these ones as well, as long as it's a Marshall 4x12 and it's got a vintage sort of feel to it. I think it'll sound really good. What you can do is choose between here as well. What I went with is a basket weave AX mix, which I believe is a 4x12 with greenbacks, but I could be wrong as well. Let me know in the comments. What I'm gonna do is set the low cut immediately up to 80 Hertz, as I always do. The high cuts I'm gonna go up to 15,000 here. And also I'm going to mic it up with a D112 dynamic mic, which is, I believe, the XFX implementation of a AKG large diaphragm mic. So with that done, everything is at default except for the mic and the low cut and the high cut. This is how we are sounding now. It's got a lot of things missing because I want this preset to be fat. I want it to have that right amount of clean chime, and also at the same time, because if you hear the sound, it's distorted or it's clean. It's a very thin line between both of the things, and that's where the preset has always eluded me, and it's always confused me as to what kind of a tone this really is. So I went with a clean sort of a tone, but I want it really fat, and I don't want it to have too much breakup as well, but at the same time have a lot of atmosphere and ambience around it, because this preset must sound like that, because it's a legendary tone. You want your room to be filled up with the sound when you play this preset, and you want that big smile on your face when you dial it in. So stay tuned, dial it with me, it's gonna be fun. So what we're gonna do is change the amp to input drive. I'm gonna keep it as it is. Bass, I'm going to bring it down to 3. The mids, I'm going to bring it down to 2.5. And the treble, I'm going to bring it up to 7.3. Depth also I'm going to put up to 5. And I'm not going to touch the master volume or the level at the moment. We're going to come back to that later. So I'm also going to turn on the bright switch as well, because that gives me a little bit more bite. So with that done, this is how we are sounding. So it's got that bite in there, but it's not fat and smooth, but we'll slowly make it happen. What I'm not a huge fan of these pickups is the fact the amount of sustain, and since they're not very hot, they don't really have that kind of sustain that I'm looking for. and they don't have that kind of a smoothness as well when I'm playing with especially low input drives. Now with this one, with this amp, you can increase the input drive, but you're gonna have breakups happening, so we don't want that in this tone. So what we gonna do is have a drive pedal in the beginning, and we're not looking to add too much drive. We're looking to add more sustain and more depth and more tone to the actual overall preset. So what we're going to do is have the drive come down to 2. Sorry, I'm going to not choose a rad distortion. I'm going to use a blues overdrive pedal over here. Tone's going to come down to 0.89 or 0.9, whichever way you like it. I'm not going to touch the low cut or the high cut. What I'm going to touch is actually the mid frequencies. I'm going to bring this one to around 220 hertz. So what we're going to do is push up the mids to around 5 dB, and I'm going to bring the level down to 1.7. So with that done, this is how we are sounding. It's getting there. Stick around. So we're going to make it better. What we're going to do is add a chorus block now. Obviously, Pink Floyd, the tone won't be complete without a chorus. If you know what David Gilmour has used on his actual rig, he actually uses a Boss CE2 from pedal, chorus pedal, from what I've read. So we have an implementation of that pedal in the XFX2. It's the Japan CE2 chorus pedal here. So we're going to select that one over here, and I'm going to change the rate to 0.11, which is the lowest. I don't want those repeats going on in the actual tone. Depth, I'm going to bring it down to 20%, and I'm going to change the LFO type to sine to make it much more smoother instead of sharp cuts. And the mix I'm going to leave at 50% because we want a lot of chorus in the tone, and I'm placing it in the beginning of the signal chain, so it's going to interact very nicely with the pedals in front of it as well, and the amp as well. What I'm going to do also is go into the tone, and I'm going to change the dimension mode to high. The high cut I'm going to bring up to 9500, and the drive I'm going to bring down because, as I said, I don't want too much drive in this preset as well. Now with that, let me check my notes. I think we should be all good with that one. With that done, this is how we're sounding. It's obviously missing that key component, the delay and the reverb, which really are going to define how the preset sounds. These things you can actually suit to your taste as well. I like the Deluxe Mind Guy, which is the implementation of the Memory Man delay pedal. The reason I chose this is just sounds a little bit more better to me in compared to the other delays. And as I said, the delay in this is not too prominent. It's not too in your face, but it's there in the background, and you want that kind of a vibe with this preset as well. So what we're going to do is change the tempo to 1/4 of a dot. Sorry, the rate, we're going to set it to 1/4 of a dot. To the tempo is 138 BPM for the preset, which is the tempo of the song. The feedback, I'm going to bring it up quite a bit to 50%, and the mix I'm going to bring down to 10%. 10.5? That should be fine. And then what we're going to do, as I always do, is go into the EQ block and bring down the high cut to around 875 Hertz or around 900, because I don't want, as I said, I don't want those repeats to be very, very in your face. They're going to be sitting in the background. If you watched my previous videos, you'll understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't, please do go and check it out, and make sure you subscribe as well.
Subscribe now.
All right, enough of that. So this is how we're sounding with the delay added in. So you can see it's already added that sort of a character to the tone where it's, very pristine. At the same time, it's got that rich atmospheric kind of a background feel to it. What we're going to do is add the reverb as well. This should have done earlier, but anyways, we're going to do it now. Where are you, reverb? Not resonator, reverb. And this, I'm going to set it on a different layer just because I get better control over it. And as I said, always dial it to your taste. These are settings which you'll probably tweak based on your room size or your live setup and where you're playing basically. So what we're going to do is change the time to around 8 seconds. This is reason being, this is why I want it to be having a lot of ambience in the background and really fill up the room, as I always said. And I'm going to change the quality to high as well. The mix is going to go up to 30%. And what I'm going to do is go into the EQ section and also tweak the high cut. I'm going to bring it up a little bit this time to around 10K. Alright, so with that done, we should be sounding good, but remember we are going to have peaking happening now because we've got a separate layer going in. So what we're going to do is go into the amp and bring down the overall master volume of the amp. And with that done, this is how we are sounding. Now you might have noticed the volume has dropped way too much, and we're gonna fix that right now. So a couple of important tweaks to do to the preset, which I gave it as a final touch and which really defined the tone for me, is that I went into the cab and I increased the proximity of the mic to around 2.7. What does proximity do? It brings the mic closer to the speakers, so naturally you're gonna have much more low and much more fatness come out of the cabinet actually, and it's gonna make your tone much more thicker. So what we're gonna do is add a multi-compression here. You could go and increase the level in the amp. There's nobody stopping you from doing that, and there's no hard and fast rule to do it the way I'm doing it. But I think adding a multi-compressor and boosting the mids is going to give you a much more warmer tone. So I've got a multi-compressor in front of me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute the first and the third channels of the multi-compressor because I'm going to deal with the mid frequencies only over here. So frequency 1, I'm going to set it to around 90, and what I'm going to do with the frequency 2 is set it to around 4550, around about there. And the level I'm going to really push up to around 14.5. And the threshold I'm going to bring it down to -27, around about there. And the ratio as well I'm going to bring down to 1.5. Now with that done, this is how you're sounding. That sounds nice. So what we're going to do as a final touch is go into the amp and go into the dynamic section of the actual amp, and I'm going to change the dynamic presence to around 3.5. This will give us a little bit of extra presence in the amp, especially when we are, biting into the strings. And also I'm going to add a bit of output compression as well, around 2. Now, if you've noticed, you might still be having some peaking. So what we're going to do is go into the amp and actually bring down the overall level to around -17 to adjust it a little bit more. And this is how we should sound now. You could add a bit of a flanger or a phaser as well in the beginning to make it sound much more suitable to that intro part that I just played. I prefer not to have it, but I think some players prefer to have it as well. So you could do that by adding a phaser over here or a flanger, whichever suits you. I like the phaser more. So going to the phaser, and I'm going to change this to script 45 tempo. I'm going to bring it to around 1 trip. And then the mix, I'm going to bring it down to around 30%. With that done, this is how we are sounding on the intro section. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for the preset. Make sure you check out the other videos in the channel as well. I'll put the preset on Exchange as always. Feel free to download it, try it out, and let me know your feedback as to what you would change in the preset. And if you haven't checked out the ToneQuest series, I strongly recommend you go and have a look. I'm sure you'll find some presets which you're after and some tones which you would love. So until the next episode of ToneQuest or until the next preset, make sure you keep rocking, and cheers, bye bye.